that quandary of, do they borrow money they don't have, keep their doors open, or do they literally shut it? And we'll know soon. This shows their borrowing for the first 6 months. You saw the Auditor General's numbers. Those numbers, again, are going to go much higher in the second half of the year because 70% of your revenue comes in property taxes, and it basically all comes in between July 1 and the end of the calendar year. So you're living off of half of last year's allocation and whatever residual dollars you have in terms of your property taxes. But there's no property taxes coming in the second half of the year. All right, so in all this, we don't get a formula, we don't get a budget, we don't get anything. We have 297 districts in this study out of Temple University. Again, assuming the BEF increase would be 2%. The 2% increase in the basic education funding line item. And taking out all the additional costs you see there for local pension costs, an increase in salaries of 1%, charters, health care, other major expenditures. 297 districts will go backwards again if it doesn't get cured. So we have a problem in school finance. We don't have a system, and we have difficulty making year-to-year decisions with school boards like you because of the process, because of the system, and because we don't do good things in terms of giving you proper tools to work it with. All right. So I think I almost stayed where I needed to be time-wise. So I know I've given you a lot of information. I've tried to give you a perspective of your district versus statewide, and then look at what's happening with other districts. And I'd be glad to answer any questions I can if you have any for me.
Yes. Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Mason.
You're welcome.
Do you present basically the same thing to newly elected school board directors for PSBA?
I have done the PSBA programs, yes.
Because your name did come up during the orientation, and you do present a well on a factual basis presentation. During it, I wish we had an opportunity after each section that we would ask questions. On one of the slides, you mentioned that the health insurance is an increase of 4%. Is that based on the standard healthcare cost for insurance companies covering the employees, the staff, the district? Or is it a combination of self-insured? Because we are self-insured. So based on what you presented, that 4%, what is it based on?
It is both categories, self-insured and fully insured. It is a low end of the scale number out of a statewide study on school employee health programs by the Legislative Budget and Finance. It is a very conservative number.
Conservative number?
Yes.
What percentage of the school districts do you know are self-insured versus insured by the health insurance companies? And on top of that, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I would say this. There are a number of county-wide or regional healthcare consortiums. And so if you go to Allegheny County, I believe virtually every district, every school district, that's 42, I believe, in Allegheny County, are participants in the Allegheny County School Employee Healthcare Consortium. I think I got all that. So virtually every single one in Allegheny County, for example. There are several smaller regional concerns. I would imagine that somewhere about 40%, perhaps even more, of school districts are in some consortium effort. Maybe small ones, maybe big ones. And I'll find that out for you.
I would appreciate it. Does that, of the school districts that you have survey research, how many are under the federal consortium, the ACA, Obamacare?
Well, nobody's there yet, so they're in that process. So they've started to have to do reporting, but the actual marketplace for school employees or their plan evaluation doesn't start for 1 more year. They're in the evaluation stage, and a year from now, they will have to meet all the compliance requirements, including the Cadillac tax, et cetera.
You also mentioned in one of the slides that and I was reading a couple of months ago, the impact of the stock market in 2008, 2009, there was a gigantic increase, and most of anyone's portfolio took a hit too, including yours truly. The money managers still received their cut of managing the retirees' retirement fund, correct?
Yeah.
Right, okay. And what happened is that, why should I pay my broker for losing money? And I think there's a court case right now relative to the money managers. If they just left it alone, because there were some selling off of the retirement program, if they just left it alone, they would have had 3 times the amount today. Because that's what, if you lost on an average between 33 and 38%, if they would have left that alone, they would have had 3 times, they would have made that up. But that's just a point. How do you determine, or how does the Commonwealth determine the poverty rate for a particular school district? Is it based on federal guidelines, or is it that?
Yeah, the slide I showed you with the percentages on, that was the percentage of free and reduced lunch participants. So that's the federal requirements. So yes, it's a federal standard.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
Will we receive a copy of this?
Sure can, right? You can. Yeah.
One of the things I have, Mr. Hines, the formulas, and you mentioned the basic education formula, which you showed us there. And that varies every year, apparently, based on the composition of the legislature?
Well, right now, we have no formula. Right now, they make up an annual appropriation and can use whatever factors they decide is appropriate that year.
So what was that formula that you showed us?
This is one that the Basic Education Funding Commission has adopted. It is in, and has been in, one of the budget bills to implement for this year.
Okay, so that's one of the options that they're looking at.
Yes, and
Okay.
I would say we're either going to get, hopefully, we'll get a formula for the 15-16 BEF dollars, or we'll get them next year for 16-17.
Now, all this money that's not going out is somewhere where it's going to be there when all this dust settles.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And the other thing is there any charter school funding, charter cyber school funding formula changes being considered as to how they're funded as part of this budget?
So yes and no. Yes, there's a lot of discussion. There's a huge charter reform piece that has undergone a lot of legislative scrutiny. It's got many recommendations, and one is to create a commission, much like they did a special ed funding commission and the basic education funding commission. This would set a charter funding commission in place. That has sort of fallen off the wayside right now, like many other issues have, because this initially budget, pension reform, and state store privatization were the 3 issues getting all of the time in Harrisburg. And so right now, the pension reform thing's fallen off the wayside, the state store privatization has fallen off the wayside, and the 800-pound gorilla in Harrisburg with the boxing gloves is the budget. So while there's been a lot of discussion about charter efforts, I don't know that it's going to happen between now and June.
Anything else?